What else?
This is really a comment more for the legislators. Two things. One thing that was said earlier, that we're saying that the testing is a financial burden. But no one's asking the question if you have, or the data collection, the testing, those things are a financial burden, but no one's asking the question, do we have a right to do that? I think that's a really, really important point. It's not enough for me to say, I don't want to pay for it, right? It's really, I think it's a more fundamental question that the leaders, you guys ought to be asking, should we even be considering paying for this before you ever get to the funding of it? That's my take on it. And I think our leaders locally have a responsibility to reach out to the national leaders and say, we're not going to take this up. You're not doing this to our state because you don't have a right to do it. So I think from an integrity standpoint, I don't want to ask the easy question, the budget question. That's an easy question. That's math. That's numbers. I want to ask the integrity question. Should it even be considered? And the second thing that concerns me, again, is another, I guess, integrity issue. When you say, and with due respect, I understand when you're in politics, your concern is to continue to be in that role and continue to serve, and I know that you guys have great motives. But to say that I'm not on the education committee, and so when someone from another city calls me about my committee, I'm not terribly concerned with that. In my opinion, if someone from Memphis calls you about something that's on your committee, you have a responsibility to listen to that person, because just because their representative is not on your committee. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I hope that you guys will reconsider that thought process. It's not just politics at that point. You have concerned people who live somewhere else who are impacted by what you're doing. So their local person has a responsibility to talk to you, and in my opinion, you guys would have that's my as a voter, that's my position on that.
I'm not going to speak for Glenn, but when we say that if you start getting X number of phone calls, 500 phone calls, income tax, I would get 1,300 phone calls overnight, okay?
Right.
No, 13 phone calls overnight, and what you'd have to do on that type of situation, you'd count the people for and against it. But you try to get back to the people, your constituents that you actually serve. We just don't throw those results out. I mean, we know what they are, a person's for, or against, So we keep track of those. But the ones we really want to get back with is the constituents, So those are not, he didn't mean they were thrown out. It's just that the most important people we're going to talk to are our constituents themselves. And we keep track of a running total, more or less, of the different views, if that makes sense.
And then you share a point, is there a point of sharing within the legislative body of your phone calls coming in?
Yeah, when do you pick up the phone to Dolores Gresham and say, hey, Dolores, I'm getting all these phone calls about education. We need to talk.
And we do, that we relate that back. We relate that back to the chairman or to...
And you give the stats of how many phone calls came in?
But what's important to one district is irrelevant to another district. What's important to one legislator is irrelevant to another legislator.
But this is not a district issue. This is a statewide issue. So I mean, that's redundant.
For example, when the chairman of education, I said, I have grave concerns about Common Core, here's why. And he said, it's funny, Glenn, I have not had one phone call about Common Core.
Who said that?
Who said that?
Chairman of the committee.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And so all of a sudden that's what he told me. So all of a sudden I have no leverage with convincing him that this is important for the state of Tennessee, because in his mind, no one in his district has called him.
And that's the
problem.
That's the problem right there. That's the foundational problem, and the integrity issue I spoke of is I think it is relevant. He has a responsibility to listen to us, just because I don't live in Knoxville, and I think all of you guys ought to take. If you have that view, you. I don't want to be disrespectful. You need to change that view, because Knoxville should be listening to Franklin. If just because Franklin doesn't have a representative on the education committee, that to me is irrelevant. Honestly, I mean, they should, just because no one from his district called. So I would encourage you guys to tell those folks in those committees to be leaders and listen to everyone, not just the folks that are going to vote them in next time, because that reveals kind of a sinister, the sinister thing about politics that people are tired of.
They're making us all become one district,
It's
one standardized
disenfranchisement.
across the, it's not one district anymore, it's one.
I just hope you guys
It
will
is
encourage
one.
them to listen outside their district. That's my largest point, and that's the thing I like.
And let me to that large point, I know for a fact we have, and I've had this conversation with two of them today because we sat down and disagreed. So we have, it's just that if you have a neighbor that has a different interest than you don't have, it's hard to convince your neighbor to do X when he doesn't see X, he sees Y. That's the same with us. But I'm not disagreeing with your point, I'm just trying to get you to see where our vantage point as well.
I have a quick, just from an understanding point, and I'm so sorry, I'm sort of ignorant on this, so I'm looking for some feedback from you. You, according to what Hannah said, you are the caucus leader. What are your duties in that?
And all three of us, we have been honored with leadership roles. So let me be real. Charles chairs finance. So if it has to do with financial matters, he has great say in it. Jack chairs commerce. If it has to do with business, Jack has sway. My job is working with the speaker, working with chairmen of committees to try to get the bulk of the caucus to go along with those issues that are conservative and Republican, all right? That doesn't mean they listen to us by any stretch of the imagination. If I could dramatize my point, Hall's tax, that's very important to us. It's very important to our residents of Williams County. In all honesty, most of the county, most of the state can give two wits about cutting the Hall's tax. And that applies sometimes to things like Common Core. Too many Tennesseans are apathetic. They don't know what's coming down the pike. And we try to educate our peers, but we need folks in their districts and across the state to get engaged as well. Does that make sense?
So let me get this straight. Is this like a meeting that you go sit in and you get to decide what everybody's talking about? Or how you're informing the other legislators? Talk us through the process that you go through in trying to press, because
Sure.
I guess from what you just said a minute ago, if you're using, strong language regarding the Common Core being against it, it just seems like you would be able to crusade or throw a little bit more weight in what is discussed, and the education committee members would be a little bit more persuaded. I guess that's what I'm understanding, that you get to maybe
Let me take a shot.
direct that
Okay.
discussion. I don't know, sorry.
The caucus does direct. I used to be a caucus chairman. I was a caucus chairman back in the early 2002. So, and I'm not in Glenn's doing that's the job of caucus chairman. As your job as caucus chairman, we'll have caucus meetings, and there'll be key points that people want to talk about.
Okay.
If we can direct, Glenn can direct from there what your thought process is on Common Core. He had the discretion to bring up any subject matter he wants. And Common Core is discussed at a caucus meeting and at a number of meetings, either in public or just groups of people meeting together. So it is discussed. But what Glenn was trying to say, in some parts of the state, this is not a high issue. This is not a high issue in some parts of the state. So we can say that this is a very pressing issue here in Middle Tennessee. I'm not going to say just Williams County, because I know Wilson County, Rutherford County, so I mean, right in this Middle Tennessee, this is probably one of the hottest topics that we're going to have. But you go over to other places, there's no one calling them, no one talking to them about it or anything else. So we're trying to educate, say the group of Middle Tennessee probably has 24, 25 Republican legislators right here. So we're the ones, those 22, 25 are trying to push and saying how important this is and why it's important. But you get someone, say like in the Knoxville area, in that whole area, I'm not just talking about Harry Brooks district, but that whole area around Knoxville, they may not be getting the phone calls.
Actually, Knoxville had hundreds of teachers show up at a school board meeting in opposition to Common Core, and Knoxville has had multiple school board meetings go viral with millions of hits because of what both teachers have risked their jobs to say and students. So I know that's the buzz out of Knoxville, but if you look at the internet hits out
But,
of
you know, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
their group, is not saying that they're getting a lot of negative. I'm not saying they are or they're not. That's what the representatives in that area are saying.
But they're not listening, because I have friends over there.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's no different, and I wanna make the comparison what Glenn was originally. The Hall of Income Tax in Williamson County is a very important thing, okay? I can go to a dozen counties in the state, no one in that county even pays a Hall of Income Tax, they couldn't tell you what it's about. So you're talking to those 12 representatives, and say, what are you talking about? I care less. No one even pays it in my county. And we probably have 25% of the people in Williams County that pay the Hall tax. They all know about it. But you get to some other areas,
But Charles, all our kids are supposed to come.
everyone's kids.
Yeah, it affects the whole state.
And it just,
I-
I'm sorry.
but I'm just
sorry,
trying to-
but if there's districts that
I'm
aren't
just trying to
calling,
give you
it's because they've been kept in the dark.
no, I'm just trying to give you a comparison. I wasn't trying to,
I know, I'm just saying.
Could I
that's
ask a
fair
question,
comparison.
please? Does it have anything to do with
actually,
rural
fair
versus,
comparison in every-
does it have anything to do with rural versus urban populations? Because from what I'm hearing, the urban centers are focused on this issue.
It's almost suburban is engaged.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost suburban.
Since Common Core, being education, affects every single student and family in the state, and you guys have admitted that there's tons of clueless people who could potentially mess us up if they're not calling their legislators, we want you guys to have our backs and forcefully let Harry Brooks and Dolores Gresham and all them know that people are watching, and we've gotten indications that the governor likes Common Core, which I cannot imagine, but I remind you, and I know you know this, and I'm saying this rhetorically, and I'm saying it to every single person I've called, the legislators are not elected by the governor, they're elected by the people, and people are ticked off about this, so I don't care what Bill Haslam said. It tells you all about, well, if you don't do what I say, I'm making this up, Glenn, then I won't appoint you, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that if you don't get elected, it doesn't matter what Bill Haslam thinks. I'm just being real straight, and I hope I don't sound disrespectful, but we're just very passionate about this, and we're not giving up. And I called Harry Brooks' office and explained to his aide that I wasn't in the district, but I was calling them because he was the chairman of the committee, and she said, well, would you like him to call you back? I said, I would love that. Gave him my cell phone number. He never called me back. So, and I know Barb called him. I know lots of people called him. So whoever it was that told you all that they're not getting phone calls, it's not being true. Maybe they said not from their district, but in Knoxville, but I find that really hard to believe.
I have friends in Knoxville that are calling.
Yeah. Denise, go.
I'll give you a holler and let you know. David,
They may not want to answer that. Guys, before you leave, on your voter registration card, it says what district you live in. So as elections come up, let's see, Glenn's got an election coming up. Charles, you do, right? Jack, no, right? Okay, and then school board, even districts. If you're in District 10, the school board person is going to run for re-election, I suppose. And then Pat Anderson in this district is going to run, I don't know if she's pulled papers, but the school board is very important. Until we can get the state straightened out, we need to work on our little piece of heaven right here. And if anybody wants to talk to me about homeschooling, come up.
Is Pat here?
Pat is not here. She was invited. She did not come.